Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of this mini series, which is all about unlocking and awakening the magic within. So the first episode, I chatted with my amazing co-host who is with us again today, Yolandi Boshoff, who is a soul coach. And we explored and learned a little bit about the process of DNA activation and how that unlocks the magic within us. And today we've got an extra special guest, Ceryn Rowntree, who's actually been through the DNA activation process with Yolandi. And I'm really excited to kind of hear Ceryn's take on her experience and what she was able to unlock for herself moving forward. So hi Yolandi and hi Ceryn, welcome to the show today.
Hi ladies, thank you for having me.
Hi Leanne.
Most welcome. Absolutely. So Ceryn, I just want to really dive straight in because I'm fascinated by this topic and I really want to hear about your experience with Yolandi. So do you want to share a little bit about your overall experience of the DNA activation?
I mean, quite simply, it was just mind-blowing. It was incredible. I've been on this sort of spiritual journey, for want of a better word, actively for the last 20 years or so. And my DNA activations with Yolandi were the most powerful thing I've ever done in the whole of that journey. They were just incredible. And I think it's I feel like I'm not saying this just because Yolandi's here, I promise, but it's such an honor as well to be held by somebody as beautifully as Yolandi does. They go so deep and they're so powerful, and it's really easy, I think, to just go through that and then feel like you're on your own, and you're not, because you've got Yolandi holding your hand and supporting you every step of the way as well, which was just such a lovely thing. And like I say, such an honor. It really felt like a sacred experience, to be honest.
Amazing. Yeah, I totally agree, because I haven't had my DNA activation, but I have had a session with Yolandi and it is a magical process. So what sparked this decision to go ahead and have the full DNA activation for yourself?
So I'd heard a little bit about Yolandi's work previously, and it had always just sounded really cool, and I'd always liked the sound of it. And I knew there were, at the start of last year, I kind of identified 5 core fears that I was carrying through life with me. And I was like, I need to work with these. I know they're holding me back. And I'd done a lot of other things, but there were a couple of those fears that they just weren't shifting. And hearing about Yolandi's work, hearing about the work Yolandi had done with other people, I thought, you know what, I think this might be the thing. This might be the next step. So I'd done a few of Yolandi's meditations online and knew that she was somebody I trusted to hold space, that she was somebody that I trusted to be that powerful priestess. And so I just kind of dived in, really. It was a birthday present to myself, was the first round of DNA activations. And yeah, I haven't regretted it for a moment.
So you've done the full, all of the strands, because we were learning about that in the previous episode, all of the different strands. And I love that visual. I get a real visual of like kind of the light traveling up and then, becoming all encompassing. So what did you learn? So what did you learn about yourself? Because the first stage, Yolandi, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first part is all about, learning about yourself, like now in this 3D environment. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So the first 12, we really focus on the seal removal and then the connection, like with either the cosmos or the earth, and your physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional aspects of this 3D experience, basically.
Awesome. So Ceryn, tell me, what came through for you when the seals were removed? That sounds so exciting, by the way.
It is. And there's so much. How long have we got? Do I have 3 hours? We could talk about this. So I took notes.
The short version.
I took notes after my sessions with Yolandi, because I'm a geek and that's what I do. And I ended up, after the full 48 strands, I ended up with 25 pages of notes, because there was that much stuff came through. And Yolandi records them all as well, I should say, so that you're not just trying to remember it. But I think the most poignant thing, I'm almost now trying to think back to the first 12 and thinking, what did we talk about then? The most poignant thing for me was Yolandi saw me in a cave outside of Petra at a point when I had kind of challenged the dominant forces in whatever the church was at that time, whatever the sort of religious institution was at that time. And I knew they were doing some really bad stuff, and I'd spotted them and I'd gone in and challenged them, and they'd turned it around on me. And made me out to be the bad guy, and I ended up kind of dying alone and starving in a cave outside of the city. And it resonated so deeply with so many of the fears I had about speaking my truth. And you know, I've done a lot of past life work in the past, and there were other things that had tapped into that fear that I'd thought about, you know, oh, this is why, but nothing hit the nail on the head as much as that did. And even now there's points where I catch myself, and this was what, a couple of months ago now, I'm catching myself falling into old patterns, and I'll go, oh, hold on, this isn't you talking, this is you back in Petra talking. Bring it back in, Ceryn, think about it differently. And it really gave me that huge understanding of that lifetime. So I think in that first one, that was probably the biggest one for me at the very start. And there's been so much more since then, you know. Well, you asked about the first one, so again, I could talk for hours. I won't.
So what else did you let go? So let go of fear, and I can totally relate, because when I had my session with Yolandi, that was like significant. That was the shackles were released, so to speak, of the fear that really kept me, you know, preventing me from moving forward on anything in life. Like I felt this intense fear from being a very young age, and it was very confusing as a child because I couldn't understand what I was scared of. And then because I felt like the world was terrifying as a child, I obviously grew up into become an adult who thought the world was terrifying. And then there was that conflict happening because I had all of this creativity ready to be birthed in the world, but I was literally frozen with fear of being able to go ahead and bring that into the world. So I totally love that you know, can find yourself in that cave in Petra and associate all of these feelings of fear that you're having right now with that moment. And it almost just disappears. It just melts away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful thing. So what else did you let go of? What else did you learn about yourself that you can, you know, no longer bring into this lifetime and can leave in past lifetimes?
I think the biggest one probably for me was doubt, in terms of doubt in myself, but also in terms of doubt in my connection, I guess, in what I've seen and what I've done, because a lot of what Yolandi spoke about was in relation to things that I've kind of always had a bit of an inkling of in the back of my head and had never told her, by the way. That's not to say we discussed it, we hadn't, but I've always had a bit of an inkling about in the back of my head, but hadn't kind of had any proof of that, hadn't had any evidence of that. So I thought that maybe it was just me daydreaming or me, you know, hoping or whatever it may be. And hearing what Yolandi had to say as she went through the DNA activation was so powerful, because it backed up a lot of what I suspected, a lot of what I already knew, but didn't just back it up in terms of, yeah, this is right, move on. Backed it up with the entire backstory, with like everything, all of the facts, all of the insights, all of the color to it. So that instead of just kind of going, oh, I've got a bit of an inkling, now I can go, yes, I know that's true. And here's why I know it's true, because of all of these different things. Yeah. So it just gave me, you know, I almost think that when I've looked at past lives in the past, I've seen them as a life that I lived, yes, but not my life that I lived. Like Yolandi helped me to live them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm smiling away because I can really relate to what you're saying, because I had a very similar experience. And you're true in what you're saying about that inkling. It's like you have that knowing, and then we can read something in a book and it you know, lets that light shine a little bit brighter, but having that full visual and being able to being physically taken back to that point,
yeah,
it's like connects everything together. And it's like the missing piece, isn't it? The missing piece to the puzzle, and you return to wholeness. That's how I felt. It was like I felt like I'd reclaimed myself once again. Yeah. I'd reclaimed all of these parts that I'd left along the way, and you know, and I felt whole and together once again. So yeah, I love what you're sharing. That's awesome.
I think that's a really beautiful way to put it. That wholeness is, I remember coming out of the last session and just feeling like sitting in meditation a couple of days later and feeling like I'm back. All of me is back now. And I didn't even realize part of me had been missing before, but now all of me is back, and it feels pretty awesome.
It's exciting.
Really excited.
Yolandi, have you got any questions, or do you want to add anything? Because we're chatting away about you and how amazing you are and how you've activated all of this inside of us, and you're sitting there, the queen, the high priestess, creating all of this magic.
I feel, oh man, I feel so emotional now listening to you guys, and it makes me really happy, because that is the aim of the work, right? To bring us back to who we really are. And when you guys said about like, I've come back home to myself, that for me is like, that's the ultimate goal with all my work. And I think what Ceryn also spoke about is like those moments that she has when she kind of almost goes back into the old ways. I wanted to speak a little bit about that, because the shadow side of things are quite important, because, you know, once you've done your DNA activation and you see this whole thing about like, this is me and this is how I'm showing up and this is how I want to be, the old parts of you sometimes want to come in and they want to just go, oh no, guess what? So I want to speak a bit about that, and just about like, Ceryn, how have you been dealing with those, when those little, I call them, they're like little foxes, right? They like kind of come in. That's how I see them. So how have you been dealing with that now? Because I mean, we've done the work now, so now you're on your own, right? And you have to create and do your thing and show up and all of that. So how have you been dealing with that? And I'd just like you to share with the people a bit more about that.
I think the big difference to how I've been dealing with it in terms of how I would in the past is that I have a lot more confidence to deal with it now. Because now when those foxes are coming up, I'm like, I know what this is. I know what this is, and I have confidence in who I am and where I'm headed. So they can get lost, frankly. But I guess, so how I've been dealing with it is a lot of meditation, a lot of journaling. And it's interesting how much more depth still is then coming out as I'm journaling, because, you know, all of this is then sparking things. And from that place of wholeness, I'm then getting more insight, which means that I can sort of take those fears and go, no, I can see where this plugs in here and what this is all about. And I can get a greater grounding. And to be honest, a lot of cacao, a lot of sitting on a beanbag, drinking cacao with my journal when they come up. But I do think I'm sort of moving through those places faster than I was previously, because I have that ground and that wholeness to kind of fall back into.
Yes. And I think that for me is like, I love that, because that's what this whole thing taught me as well. It's like we look at it, the observation ability and our awareness is just so enhanced. We're like, oh, I can see that for what it is, and I deal with it and I move through it. And I think that was, for me personally, one of the biggest things was being able to like just kind of skip through my doubt, not like hold on to it and just let it take over. So tell us a bit more about like where you were and what you were creating, and now, like what is unfolding and happening for you now since we finished our work.
So previously, when we first started, I kind of have two strands to my business. I'm a soul-led therapist, and I have a brand called The Divine Feminist, which is a podcast and all these other things. And previously they were there. They were both there. I was kind of ticking along with them. I sort of knew roughly what they were. I knew that, you know, The Divine Feminist was turning into a book. The book needed to be written. The book had a few words started to be written, and that was about that. Soul-led therapy was up there, and I was talking about it. And since we had our DNA activation, it's just, it hasn't necessarily changed them. It's just put my work into its fullness too. So the book is now flowing, has flowed in a way that I didn't expect it to. And I've just allowed it to carry me along. Previously, I would have been a real control freak with it. And now I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. Just become what you need to be. Soul-led therapy I had a session with a client the other week, and she's like, what has happened to your sessions? She'd had a little break for a few months. What's happened? This is so different. There's just more to it. What's going on? They've just kind of expanded and almost become what they were meant to do. I've got courses planned, I've got workshops planned, I've got, you know, talking to you and going through the DNA activation. I've suddenly got this year-long course that I'm like, right, okay, that's being done. That needs to be done. And it's as though the creativity that were previously tiny little sparks behind the scenes, now those sparks have just really ignited, and I see where they're going, and they've ignited into torches that are leading the way almost. So it just feels like I have the trust, not just in me, but I have the trust in my creativity, and I have the trust in my creations as well, I guess.
It's like that blind faith has been ignited, hasn't it? And I feel exactly the same. And there's zero attachment, because I feel like I'm totally surrendering to this creative energy that's coming through me, and I trust it because I've connected to it in that past life session.
Yes.
So I trust that when it's coming through, it's meant to come into fruition. And so in the past, I might have kind of stressed about things working out, or had a little wobble, or second guessed, where now it's like, okay, I received this creative inspiration, and I immediately run with it. And I've not yet had my full DNA activation for a very good reason, because we were laughing, weren't we, Yolandi, at the fact that I've had a book downloaded, I've had over 20 projects downloaded to me. I'm having in this constant state of creative energy, and I'm almost fearful of what might actually happen if I go ahead and do the full DNA activation. So it is on the cards. I am going to book in and get it done, but it just creates that instant balance between possibility and potential and this divine source and the human. It creates that balance, and it almost suits the human into, it's okay, I've got you, this trust in this energy that's coming through, trust in the inspiration. And having that for me, and as somebody who has spent years and years and years of feeling fearful and in mistrust and not trusting myself, and in that constant state of anticipation that something's about to happen to me really bad, to be able to sit now and feel at peace and connected and supported, even when I'm sat by myself, is just awesome. Like I can't thank Yolandi enough for having the inspiration herself to reach out to me, and then to, holding me so graciously during the session. It's just been just a wonderful experience. So Ceryn, is there anything else that you want to share before we end this episode?
I think there's something that you just said there that I just want to pick up on, because it feels important, and I haven't mentioned it. When you talked about source, I think something that I've found really beautiful about working with Yolandi is, often with healers, with coaches, with guides, you will connect into something higher, and you will do that with a conduit. And I feel like going through DNA activations with Yolandi hasn't done that. Of course, Yolandi was a conduit. Of course, we were working with guides and all of that stuff. But I feel like it's just plugged me straight back into my soul. And in doing that, it's plugged me straight back into source in a way that I didn't even know was possible, in a way that nobody else talks about. And that's probably the most powerful piece of all. And for all of that, I'm just so grateful. I think I just want to say, going to be cheesy, I just want to say thank you, Yolandi, because I'm so grateful. Working with you has changed my life in positive
absolutely.
ways. And I'm
thank you for taking us to the magical forest. And you only know what we're talking about when you actually work with Yolandi, but she does have a magical forest.
I have a few magical places though. There's like a few places, and then you can ask Ceryn. Her guides created her own magical place that she gets to work in now. So people get gifted their own magical places, which is quite cute.
Well, thank you for guiding me to your magical forest. It was an adventure. And thank you so much, Ceryn, for sharing your experience. And thank you, Yolandi, again for co-hosting this with me. And in the next episode, we get to see the whole process in action. So we've got an awesome guest who's ready to be activated, and Yolandi's going to lead the way and create magic, awaken a magic within this special guest. So we're so excited, and thank you so much for watching today. All right.